Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of A Musician and a Filmmaker. I forgot the name of the podcast for a second.
Well, we didn't think we'd get this far, so that's why we're,
Right.
we're doubting the name of our cast even at this point.
I was about to say, I think this is so far the longest running podcast I've ever started, so that's already an accomplishment. It's been a busy month, man. I've been crunching big time to finish this movie, and I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but for everyone who doesn't know, I'm Greg Phipps, the filmmaker, the titular filmmaker, and with me is my co-host,
Jordan Randall. That's me. I'm the titular musician, I suppose, although we're both musicians.
Well, you're also a bit of a filmmaker.
But I guess if we're gonna...
There's a bit of an overlap.
I'm a bit of a filmmaker.
It's just because of the Panda Bear song
overlap.
that we stuck with it. It's especially prescient this month because Jordan has a new album out called A Collection of Thoughts, I think.
Mm-hmm. That I think. I
was close. And then I have a documentary that I've been working on for 2 years that just came out last week called An Elegant Weapon, The Story of 3 in the Afternoon and 6 in the Morning, which is a long title, but we can just call it An Elegant Weapon, or The Doc is a lot easier. Yeah, so this is going to be a different kind of episode. We're actually going to have Travis Boles, who was the subject of my documentary, on later to discuss the movie with us. So that's exciting. And we've got some other things in the works for next episode, which is coming up very soon. But first, we'd be remiss if we didn't briefly talk about Animal Collective, as we always do.
we must.
I guess we can go ahead and spoil that. We can at least say that next episode we're going to talk about the new Animal Collective album. Like, that'll be our featured album, Isn't It Now? Because we're recording this on the day before the album comes out worldwide. It leaked a month ago, so I have heard it. Sorry, I've heard it a number of times. It's great. We're not going to sit here and dwell on it, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out that that's what the situation is. And also, I'm going to keep nervously checking the post office delivery website thing to see when my record arrives, because supposedly it's going to be here within the next 20 minutes, but you know how it goes. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have the same inefficient post office in Canada up there.
I just assume everything's going to be like 1 to 2 weeks later than what they say. It's generally how it goes. And
twice as expensive as it needs to be.
Yeah, I basically have to pay double every time that I buy something from Domino. And they stagger their releases too, which is so annoying because I'm like, something will come out limited. Like if Defeat and Isn't It Now were kind of made available around the same time, I wouldn't have had to pay that shipping 2 times, but now I had to pay it 2 times.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's got to be a pain in the ass.
It certainly is.
All right, well, like we said, the album leaked. I liked it. We'll get into it. But just for our 5 listeners out there, get excited for next month. We're going to try to record them I've got a busy 2 months ahead of me, so there isn't going to be a November episode, but we're going to try to squeeze out a couple episodes before I'm unavailable, and then in December we'll get back on track, and then who knows what the future holds, You
never know.
So, in the meantime, we should go ahead and do our own self-promotion for the next few hours, as I'm sure
this
everyone
is full,
is excited to hear.
Self-indulgence cast today.
But you know what? We did 3 episodes. We proved our credibility. We nailed in a loose structure. I think we can indulge a little bit. I mean, the whole podcast is self-indulgent, right? I mean, who cares what we have to say? Who are we? I mean, I don't want to downplay the legendary status of Mr. Jordan Randall with the internationally known YouTube channel with Animal Collective rarities that... I mean, again, that's the way I discovered who you were. So, I mean,
I've become a celebrity for doing basically nothing, which is, I think, the best way that anyone can achieve that status.
Yeah, I guess so. But at the same time, you sort of started, I feel like your name, or your channel rather, was the more prevalent, source of these things. And then it also inspired other people to sort of take up the archiving.
Yeah, for sure. I don't even do it anymore because of that, because there's a number of people that do it now, and I'm like, they'll probably catch whatever's on the O'Brien system and put it up.
Your whole point was when you started doing it was well, no one else is uploading this to YouTube, so I might as well, just so it's up.
Yeah. it was kind of like a more accessible spot for other, Animal Collective fans that maybe weren't part of like Collected Animals or didn't know about, the Discord and stuff like that to kind of listen to these really cool bootlegs and rarities and stuff.
Although you started uploading them like years ago, right? Like long time.
Really long time ago, actually. Yeah,
probably around the time I discovered the band.
That's wild to think.
Anyway, yeah, and that also is worth pointing out that it's been like almost 10 years since I discovered like Merriweather Post Pavilion. I think it's coming up on 9 years. So I mean, I know you like you said, you're old, so you've been listening to them for longer than that. But.
Yes, I did say I was old. I started listening to them in 2005 was when I was introduced.
Damn.
I listened to Sung Tongs and Feels. A friend of mine's dad, a friend of his, their dad showed it to him and his friend. And he was like, yeah, this is like a cool band I've been listening to called Animal Collective. Then he showed them to me and I was like, this is fucking amazing. I think the first song that he played for me was Leaf House, and then like Leaf House into Who Could Win a Rabbit. And I was just like, I was pretty much sold on Leaf House immediately, but as soon as Who Could Win a Rabbit came on, I was like, whoa, like this is hitting everything that I enjoy about music, basically.
And then the softest voice comes on and you're like, hey, who's got a joint?
I did smoke weed when I was listening to that, but I was also like 18 years old at that time, so I was pretty emotional, and I remember like really feeling that like softest voice, those little guitar plucks. I was like, fuck, man, this should be in a Michel Gondry film.
That would be interesting, actually. Does he even direct anymore? Is he still doing like commercials and music videos? I haven't seen him do a feature.
So yeah, he's done a few features since the ones that people know, but they're all in French, and I think they're very like limited releases.
Oh, gotcha. Because the last one I heard of was Be Kind, Rewind, which I think surprises a lot of people that it's a Michel Gondry movie.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of music and emotions, we should talk about your album, because it's very clearly an emotional, from the title itself, a collection of thoughts that I think. It very much, that is I think a very apt title, because it sort of works as like a mission statement for the content of the album.
Yeah, I'm glad that comes across. That was the idea, I think. But it was it was one of those like lucky titles, because I had a different title for it for a very long time. It was going to be called Healthy Livin', with just a apostrophe after the, and I thought it'd be kind of funny because it's a lot of stuff that's kind of maybe like unhealthy thoughts to have, kind of ironic in a way. But then I started to not like that title, and then there's a lyric in the first song that says a collection of thoughts that I think, and I was like, I'll just use that. That actually works perfectly.
That took me like 3 or 4 listens to finally notice that, by the way. I think it was until I started reading it with the lyrics, I was like, oh, that's where that comes from. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm like basically just ripping off like Animal Collective left, right, and center here, because it's coming out tomorrow, same day as Isn't It Now, and they also used a lyric from a song. I'm using a lyric from a song.
Except your album is like 24 minutes and theirs is 64 minutes. So
yeah, this is like triple the length.
I mean, Defeat is barely shorter than your entire album.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Not a bad thing. I got nothing against the short album format. I think if you can get across your like musical statements in a succinct amount of time, there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah, well, it's funny because I remember listening to an interview with A.V. Terre, and he was saying something along the lines of he finds it impossible to write short songs anymore. Like all of his songs now are super long, like they're at least like 6 or 7 minutes long. But I'm like the complete opposite. Like I can't, like I used to write really long songs. When I was like first writing music when I was a teenager, like every song was like at least 6 minutes. Because I felt like everything was necessary. I was like, yeah, I got to do like this intro. I got to do like, 2 to 4 verses, and I got to do like a chorus, then back to the verse, or like have like a musical break, and then like back to the verse. All this shit, and like songs ended up being so long. And I mean, they were shitty songs too, because like I was just like kind of learning how to write songs. So hearing these shitty songs for like 6 or 7 minutes was excruciating in hindsight.
I mean, we all start somewhere, right? I think the longest song on my first album was like 12 minutes, but I was trying to do like a person pitch kind of thing where I did like multiple sections and then sort of try to do more of like reincorporate the melodies from the first two parts in the third part, but not like interplay kind of thing, but more like background kind of elements. So, I think art is whatever you want it to be. But I think, Jordan, you and I can both attest to the fact that artists are their number one critics.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some umbrage. Before we talk about the full album, I want to just go ahead and air my grievance that you took down your album videotapes, and that makes me very sad because I very much enjoyed that whole album, and now I can't listen to it anymore in any way.
You didn't download it while it was up there?
I guess not. I think I only ever just streamed it, which, I mean, okay. I don't want to insult your wallet or anything, but that's the truth of it.
No problem. I'll send you a copy.
Wait, do you really still have it?
I keep all my music, but I tend to do this a lot. Like, I mean, I can't even say with certainty that like that will or won't happen to a collection of thoughts because, I don't know. Maybe it's like self-doubt or something, but I was actually even like wrestling with the idea of releasing this album, and I felt like because we had agreed to talk about it, that was like kind of like that cemented it.
Yeah,
because I always have this back and forth in my head whether or not the songs are any good or not, and like even after it's already out, and even if people like give me pretty decent feedback and stuff, like at some point I can easily be like, ooh, I don't like this anymore, and then I'll just like take it offline.
Right. Well, I think the trick to that is to just keep writing new songs and then put out the old stuff, and it's more of an afterthought in your own head, so you don't hyper focus on it. But anyway, we were talking about videotapes because I wanted to put Scatterbrain on our upcoming album, TBD, sometime this decade.
Yes.
But you said that you tried to look it up on like an old hard drive, but you couldn't find it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you found it since then, or maybe this is the same conversation we're having a second time.
No, I mean, I have like all the mix downs, but I don't have I can't find the Logic files to go in there and kind of make the adjustments.
Literally, I just want to have the MP3s and I'll be a happy camper,
Well, I will send you the MP3s.
Okay. Thank God. All right. Well, now that that's out of the way, we can move on to the new album. So I think we should, just go track by track, kind of like we did last week, but A, because there's only 8 songs, and B, since I have the artist here, I can get his thought process and, thoughts behind every single track.
I'll spill all the beans.
Let's start with the opener, An Uncommon Design.
I found you on the shore. I took you to my doorstep. Added you to a collection of shells that I thought would make you feel less alone. Will you share with me the greatest history? Life's a mystery, I know that you feel like you have been fighting alone, but I swear that you won't.
So this is, just right off the bat, I think this is sort of like, if anyone knows your previous albums, including videotapes. I'm not really familiar with your other album, which is called Imitating Life. So it's very much like a singer-songwriter kind of feel to it. And I think this very much reminds me of stuff like Scatterbrain, where it's just like, as soon as it starts, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a Jordan Randall song, for sure.
Totally. Yeah, no, I definitely get that vibe too. And I did try and kind of go a little bit in a different direction with this collection of songs. But yeah, that one was definitely like classic Jordan Randall style. Short, very like focused on the melodies and like pretty stripped down. I think it's the only song really that has like piano in it on the album.
I was going to say the piano on it is like one of the best parts of just like, I feel like that immediately gets you into the mood for what the rest of the album's going to be. Just sort of that melancholy feel that can come with it, but it's also like bright in its timbre.
Yeah. I always like enjoy music that kind of sounds a little happier than it is, Although I think this song it's actually like pretty upbeat for the most part. I think even like lyrically and stuff, because I tend to write songs where it's like Scatterbrain and stuff, where that it'll have like a very upbeat backing track to it, but then like the lyrics will be kind of like a downer.
So the Panda Bear School of Songwriting.
Yeah, I think all my influences are like basically in that same vein.
I can see that. I'm just kind of scanning the lyrics to see if there was something I wanted to highlight, because I did enjoy reading the lyrics. I guess the question that I can ask, and you can probably ask any musician and it's an obvious answer, but was there a single, when you write lyrics, oftentimes when it's something that's as personal as these songs, you quite literally will write I or you, depending on who's being addressed or talked about in the lyrics. Is it fair to say that you is one person or a multitude of people from your past and present?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely a multitude of people. I think, like, in all honesty, at this point in my life, you know, like, things are fairly stable. So it's like I'll often use, you know, sort of other people's stories a lot of the time for inspiration and stuff like that. Because, like, I often do enjoy wallowing in the, you know, the more morose headspace. So it's like, when everything's going great in my life, what do I do then with that urge to write that kind of stuff? So I kind of like will sponge off of other people's shit. So it's like, yeah, the you is kind of always changing. The I think is always me from like to some degree, you know, it's like me in the shoes of somebody else, maybe from like a story that I've heard from somebody else. But yeah, the you is always kind of different.
I gotcha. Yeah, I can relate to the things are going good, so I don't have anything to write songs about feeling. Especially because, yeah, it's just like, well, I got no problems at the moment. Nothing that's worth writing, not pouring my soul out into a song about. So I really, at that point, all I want to do is just produce, you know, like from the DAW or whatever. But I think, I don't know, it can be hard to, yeah, it can, unless you're like, it's like an everyday thing for you. I think it can be difficult to find inspiration just for, that's why I think writing lyrics is also, like, I can write instrumentals all day long, you know, but when it actually comes to writing lyrics, I'm like, the fuck do I write about, me or a movie I saw?
Right, exactly. And I think, like, sometimes for me, like, I'll kind of almost just like stream of conscious sort of style, you know, come at the lyrics that way. It's like, you know, I think a lot of musicians do this where it's like you kind of just say words when you're trying to come up with a melody, and it's just like gibberish words sometimes and stuff, and then that kind of acts as a placeholder, and then until I find words. And a lot of the times, like, more so these days, like, the lyrics maybe sort of end up seeming a little bit more abstract because, like, there's a certain sonic, like, I guess, like, melody that I'm going for that other words maybe don't work so well in, but then I'll like use a word anyway, and it's just kind of like, okay, well, that, you know, might throw the listener off because that word kind of makes sense in my mind, but its main function is its melodic purpose, right, more so than it's like, you know, it's lyrical purpose, I guess.
It's tricky for sure, but I think there's also a fair amount of flexibility when it comes to stuff like that. I think as long as it doesn't like stick out like a sore thumb, you can get away with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I think when it comes to our band Lunar Panel, I'll just let you take all the lyric writing duties.
I'm cool with that. I find like if I just spend enough time like looking at like, you know, a piece of paper or, you know, some screen on that I'm typing lyrics on, like eventually something will come out. So,
well, here, that's an interesting question is, could you write lyrics for a song you didn't write the instrumental to?
Yeah.
Like if you don't have that connection, would it still be?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I think some people would argue that my lyrics are probably better when I do that. I have this kind of open-ended project with a friend of mine here in Toronto, this guy called Mark Glenn. He's a really awesome musician. He's like guitar player primarily, but he plays everything. And we did this project. We made an EP like, I think it was right before the pandemic. Our band was called Open Bar, and we did like, there was like 5 tracks on there or something, and he wrote all the music, and I just came up with the melodies and the lyrics. And I you know, not to toot my own horn or anything, but I think that those are some of the best lyrics I've probably ever come up with. And they're all based on like very like real personal stories and stuff. But yeah, I don't know, like it just worked out really well. Like the turn of phrase was really good. I was very happy with the end product, and I don't know why that happened. It may have just been, that perfect storm or something,
right?
Or maybe because I didn't have to focus on anything except for the melodies and the lyrics, I could just put more into that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's what Ben Gibbard did for the Postal Service album, Give Up, where Dintel had already written all the instrumentals and then would send them, like, I think he would literally send them in the mail through the Postal Service on, like, a flash drive or a CD or something. Or maybe, God forbid, a cassette tape.
That's amazing to think that was somehow easier than emailing it. Because they're not like
in 2002, yeah. I think it was.
I will say one last thing about Uncommon Design in terms of inspiration. That song was written pretty much right after I saw Marcel the Shell. And I think if you think about that song in that light, it'll make a lot more sense.
Interesting. I still need to see that one. That's on my list. I don't think it came to a theater near me, so I wasn't able to go out and see it.
I'm pretty sure it's on some streaming service.
Let's move on to
Gigantic.
The second song on the album.
A songbird on the forest floor. He was singing songs, but he don't sing no more. In a time long gone, the earth was one. If I wanna remain, I gotta get up. Won't help nothing if my eyes stay shut. I'm too tired to talk, too tired to. It's all around you, you brush it off. It takes some time, well, we got lost the size of love.
I think this probably... I sent you a tier list of my favorites to least favorites, which did change between my initial first hearing and like the fifth or sixth time I listened to the album. Mm-hmm. I think this is still like in my top 3 from the start because it is just like that. Okay, well, first of all, the drums in this, are they VST drums?
So for the most part, all the drums on this are sampled drums that I found in various places on the internet.
Oh, interesting.
Some of them are like layered with VSTs. I think for the most part with Gigantic, it is like literally just one sampled loop that I threw like some different effects on here and there.
Sweet. Well, I just noticed that it had like a very real sound to it. So I honestly couldn't tell. I was like, is Logic really this advanced that they can make it sound like a kit in the room? Because that's great.
No. Yeah, no, that's exactly why I used like sampled drums because I can't really achieve that sound with the plugins.
Well, I just love the melody on this one. Like, it has a bit of a like lead up to it, which I think, I don't know how I feel in a vacuum about it because I think the rest of the song is so tight that I as a fan, I'm just like, come on, get to the part I like, But of course, our favorite band's Animal Collective, we have to be used to long intros at this point, or what have you. But I really do love this song a lot. I think the Size of Love, that like hook in the song is just so strong that it's an earworm. It just gets stuck in your head. Like, it's so like catchy. And it seems that you're following a similar doctrine of put the best songs up front to get people hooked. And then, they're along for the ride at that point. Because this one, the first 3 in particular are really strong.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like there's that duality in my head where I like all the songs, but I also like feel kind of like I doubt the songs as well. But I did feel like those ones were probably like the most easily accessible or like would instantly like, have that earworm effect. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought like originally like Crash Cars I thought was pretty catchy, and I thought that was going to go somewhere near the front. I thought An Uncommon Design, because it was like a slower song, was going to be the closer. But then I, just kind of like spend a couple hours like shuffling the songs around and seeing what worked better. And I think I literally just like shuffled the songs and they ended up in the sequencing that ended up being the final sequencing. And I was just like,
interesting.
This feels like it works. Like,
Yeah.
because the past, which we'll get into soon, what felt like a little bit of an outlier, and I was like, where the fuck does this song go?
Right.
But yeah, Gigantic was that song went through a lot of changes. Actually, that song originally wasn't. I didn't think it was gonna make the cut because I wrote some lyrics to that song that just I kind of hated.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much every. I mean, I wouldn't say it's every song, but there are a good number of songs in my past where I think I have the tendency to, like, if I overthink something, then I fall out of love with what appealed to me about it in the first place, and then I just drop it. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I think, for me, the most successful songs are, like, something that just comes together really quickly and doesn't require too much additions to it. Because I think there is something about that initial sort of jam, or that spark, that if anything you try to add to it later on doesn't match the quality of what you were able to just jam out in the first place, it can feel a little disappointing. Like the nugget of the song that you fell in love with, when you have to turn it into a proper song. Because as much as I would love to just put out 90-second tracks all the time, I think people have different expectations, and people can get upset if it seems like there's more potential to his song, but then you just don't follow through on it. I mean, we can't all be guided by voices and somehow nail it in 90 seconds, but it's a tough thing. But I think you did a really good job with this one. I really do enjoy it. I think if you were, like a mainstream act and you were doing marketing and all that, I think this would definitely be a single. Mm-hmm. Which I guess we should talk about the non-album tracks, because I think that I didn't realize how much time had passed between Mother Earth and now. That's literally a year ago, because I was going through my Instagram story archive when I shared it. And I was like, oh shit, that was his previous birthday. And he just had his next birthday like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. That was originally going to be like that. That was one of the first songs, or with the first batch of songs that I was writing with the idea of making like an album. So like, the Mother Earth, like Where the Wildest Waters Rush, Plaza Lounge, like all those ones were originally intended to be part of this album. I just knew I wanted to make an album. But then as time went on, I was like, okay, these songs feel kind of like out of place. Like I think Mother Earth still kind of like works with the kind of like the sequence and stuff, but there was something about it where I was like, I don't know, maybe too much time has passed and I'm kind of over that song, so decided to leave it up.
Well, I think it's also, it does seem to have a different sort of atmosphere, or like it seems to go bigger than the rest of the songs on the album. Mm-hmm. It does seem a little more, I don't know how I could really describe it, but I get what you're saying. But at the same time, as a Jordan Randall fan, I do wish that both it and Where the Wildest Waters Rush had ended up on the album. I think the latter could have been the closer if you wanted to go for something more downbeat. But I guess Watching Me Die is kind of a low-key closer, but we'll get to it, of course.
Yeah, just kind of expand on some of those other songs. So I'm going to release probably within the span of a month the B-sides album to this.
Album or EP?
So I wrote about 30 songs.
Damn.
Leading up to this, and I ended up using 8 of them. So there's about 20 or so songs that just didn't make the cut. So I'm gonna put them together on a little, like, it's gonna be longer than the actual album. So
Nice.
it'll be kind of interesting. But yeah, I think there's around like 20 other songs that I wrote and recorded, but just didn't make sense with the collection.
So you're really selective then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it took a long time to kind of like really narrow it down. I mean, I still wasn't overly sure. There were still a couple, like up until literally yesterday, where I was like, maybe I should swap out this song for this one. I was like, no.
How long did it take from like wanting to start? Like, when did you start doing that first batch of songs? Like, how long ago was that up compared to like when you're putting it out?
So the earliest song was in 2021. That was Castle Ghost. And I'm going to include, like, on the B-sides thing, I'm going to include, like, the 2021 demo that I recorded of that. It's actually quite different than what the version that ended up on the album sounds like.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's the earliest one. But then I think I the other songs like Mother Earth and stuff, and an Uncommon Design. I think that was all around like last year, around that time that Mother Earth came out, like around my birthday, September. And then Roger, that's a pretty old song. That was like somewhere probably like maybe like spring of 2022. I think I wrote that one.
You can't talk old songs with me. We wrote Harry Anderson in 2020, and it didn't come out till 2022. So
there you go.
Or it might have been like right at the start of 2021. It was a long time, and we still haven't put out our second single, which we wrote in.
Yeah, that's been gestating for a while.
That was
a
almost
good song too.
That was over a year ago now. So we got to get to
Yeah.
that. Anyway, let's get to the next song.
Track 3, The Past.
Do you remember the past? Remember the past? It won't last, won't last. Do you remember the past? Remember the past? It won't last. Her heart is numb. Her heart is numb. Your luck's run out. Your luck's run out. Do you remember the past? It owns the past. It won't last. Do you
I like how upbeat this one is, and I feel, speaking of that song that we haven't finished, Night in Barcelona, I feel like there is a little similar like do 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 like rhythm with the synths in the background that I appreciate. I love me a square synth.
Ah,
But anyway, The Past is great. I think it's a very straightforward. There's not really much to it as far as like lyrical depth, which, not to insult your songwriting, I just mean from a general standpoint. I think it's a very, like, you are sort of prioritizing the upbeat feeling in the like house feel of the beat over, trying to make some sort of big emotional artistic statement.
100% agree with that. Yeah, that song actually like required me to shave down lyrics because I was like, okay, it needs to be really simple. And yeah, I think it was pretty simple in the end. Yeah, the one thing about that song though, even though it does sound like a very straightforward and simple song, like I will say that it's probably one of the more complex bass lines that I've ever written for any songs. And I think what's cool about it is that I don't think it necessarily comes across as like a technically difficult like bass line. And there's parts that are like more, I guess technical than other parts in that song. But it was one of those ones where I was like,
Should we play an excerpt from the bass line and we'll just have you send me the stems so we can insert it right here?
yes.
Wow, I love the way that sounds. I totally heard it just now. I know I can comment on exactly what I just heard. Well, I like the lyric, do you remember the past, the soot and the ash, it burned fast. And that may be because I just watched like a number of Werner Herzog documentaries where he visits volcanoes, especially the one about like the crafts, Maurice and Katya, the like famous scientist, the volcanologist couple that they were filming a volcano in Japan, but it basically erupted so quickly they didn't have time to get out, and they were like embalmed in the rock and the soil and stuff, which is nuts, but apparently that's how they wanted to go out. So it just reminded me of that. There is like a bit of a like Pompeii sort of etched in stone quality to it. And I mean, I think that is what you were kind of going for with the song, was that like, the past, the like time is constantly moving on. You can't really focus on the past, but it's still there. It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely what I was going for. And yeah, maybe some like more morose idea that like, these kind of things in the past that are like ephemeral are just going to keep repeating themselves. And, it's like a hopeful song about being hopeless, I guess.
That describes like half of the songs I've ever written. So I know what you mean.
That's pretty much all my songs too.
So I think that also has the quality to be a single if you were gonna do I know some people don't like having duplicates on streaming, but I don't care. I mean, maybe if you have a different album art or like a single album art, it can work, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking like some of the songs, that was one I considered as a single too. Like, I mean, I have all these early demos and stuff. Like I could kind of, do the single release and then that can have like some demos or whatever as well. Kind of see how the song became what it is.
All right, well, let's move on to number 4, Castle Ghost.
She played gypsy roads for all the zeros. Albario, Albario, Albario. She got me deep, Cuccio. I never bleed, I never feel it, I never sleep, I never wake up.
So I do like this song, despite it being the lowest on my my tier. I do want to point that out, that like every song, I think there's a song on here I would rate lower than like a C, and that's still pretty good. Okay. So, I mean, or maybe like, okay. I guess if we're going to do 1 to 10, then like a 7.
Okay,
which is still pretty solid.
That's very fair. That's very fair. I thought for a second you were going to say you hate Castle Ghost.
No. Though it does make me think of one of those Bowser's Castle Mario Kart levels where the ghosts are like flying in, and if you get too close to them, they'll make you spin out. Anyway,
that's what it's about.
I do like the instrumentation in this song. There is like a little bit of like a jangly pop indie, like would I be wrong to say modern baseball or American football, one of those two?
Yeah,
there is like a little bit of a quality to it, but it's also like you combined that and reggae or like dub kind of, especially with all the effects and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's I mean, like I wouldn't have made those two connections necessarily, but that is what it is. Like there is this sort of like dub aspect to it, which when you do hear the original demo, none of that's in there. Yeah, I don't know. It was one of those songs that came together like very quickly. It's a very short song. I just, ended up like having a lot of fun with it in basically post-production, because I was like, okay, what can I do to make this song sort of like stand out a little bit more? Yeah, it's about a guy, like a king of a castle, let's say, in Spain, and he, is being visited by like this family of ghosts. But then it turns out, Greg, that he was the ghost the whole time. He's the castle ghost.
You guys can't see it, but I look very distressed right now. I actually didn't pick that up. I was really just more like, hey, it talks about a yellow dog. I used to have a yellow dog. I didn't call him Amarillo, but I think I would probably like this song more if it didn't have the... And it sounds cool like when you have the delay like come off of it, but I'm not personally a huge fan of the, Albarillo, like that little part of it. It's not like my favorite, but I think it definitely makes it distinct. That's for sure. I mean, is that a polite way of saying I don't like it? Maybe, but I don't know. I think it's not, I don't want to discredit it, just because of that. I think it's still a good song, but I like the melody in it. I just think that if it were me making the song, I wouldn't have put that in. But again, I didn't make this album, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong for doing it. It's a personal preference thing.
Totally. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I do like it though. There's a reason that it was in my favorites when I first listened to it, but I think just upon re-listen, maybe that like repetitive section to it, like the non-verse part, maybe just didn't hold up as well, but
that's fair.
It is what it is, right? Everyone experiences music differently.
That's true.
And some people, they loop songs and don't listen to them so that they can get up their Scrabbles for some insane reason. But you don't need to get into all that. All right. Song number 5.
Number 5.
Cadet.
Cadets.
You won't play with the others weigh on your mind. You won't be in the center. There's too much pressure in the spotlight. I wish you'd come out of your shell. working so hard on yourself. I spent some time in my head, looking to the east and looking west. I travel from the highest heights to the lowest of the lowest depths. Hey, love, don't ride yourself away, love. You're up there in the clouds. It's not too late to calm down.
This song, this song is this one's pretty direct, I think, in terms of what this song is about. This is actually a personal story. Like, this past year, I basically broke up with one of my closest friends because he's kind of a piece of shit, and ultimately a space cadet. And this whole song kind of came from this feeling of still kind of caring about the person, but also kind of acknowledging their flaws and maybe seeing problems that they're having and reflecting on those problems myself. Yeah, and I think the lyrics are pretty straightforward. Probably the least abstract on the whole album, I think, on this song.
Yeah, I think I think with reading the lyrics, I think I automatically assume that if someone's writing a song where you is in the lyrics, I assume it's their significant other, and in this case, your wife. Again, I can't assume that because I don't know her very well.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sit here and tell people that that's what it's about. But I think that's just the headspace I had going into it. So it's interesting to hear that it wasn't about a romantic thing, but it was more of a friendship thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's funny because every time I release songs, I always have to assume that people are going to think that I'm writing songs about my wife. It's that does come into it sometimes, but yeah, some of the other songs are, like I said earlier, about totally different things, maybe even things that don't happen in my life. But this one, this is basically a breakup song, but about a friend of mine.
Well, I really like the acoustic guitar jugs, the chugs, if you will.
Thanks.
That stuff all really works. I like the whole song, honestly, except I did say earlier, the spoken word part, I'm I don't like that. That's probably the one thing on the album where I'm just if I could turn back time,
you would tell me, don't do that part.
It's not maybe it's just because it feels a little corny to me. But then again, I think it's tricky with spoken word to not fall into that pitfall.
For sure, yeah. I think I grew up listening to a lot of Bob Dylan and stuff, and I think that was kind of the influence there. I think I probably did some vocal takes where it was full on, you're up there in the cloud. It's
that would have been great though, honestly.
Toned it down a little bit.
Full Bob Dylan.
But I don't know. I mean, it's a weird.
Was it because you wanted to do specifically a spoken word part, or was it because you couldn't find a way to put a melody to that lyric that satisfied you?
I think I wanted to do the because I think musically, because it's weird. That part musically kind of changes key so slightly from the verses, and I was like, okay, it's going to be a little different. So I think I just ended up placeholder gibberish lyrics in the same style, a little more Bob Dylan-y when I first wrote it. But then I was like, okay, I'll put these words in because it makes sense within the context of what the song's about. And yeah, I really just I never even really second guessed it. I was like, yeah, I'll just have a little spoken word part here, and it's different. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what to tell you, Greg.
It's okay. I'll take that. I got to give you props for the higher vocals part. Because I feel like there is a bit of that is a part where I wouldn't have thought to write a part in a song like that. So it's hard for me to get in the headspace. I feel like if someone said, this is how you sing it, I'd be like, no, that's corny. But you totally nailed it. You make it work. But again, I don't think something being corny is necessarily a bad thing. I watched all 4 seasons of The Good Place, goddammit. So I think I understand when corn can be appealing. But even then here, I think it just really I think what really appeals to me about your songwriting in general is just how often you change things up, but never in a way like a Dirty Projectors way where it feels in your face about it, where there is just sort of it flows really well, but you don't really dwell on one musical idea for too long. The few Lunar Panel demos that you've written that I've had the opportunity to expand on. I've noticed that that's like a thing where it's like there's already like an A, B, and C thing, and then there's still the rest of the song to go. So that's and it's not like you do A all the way to H or anything like that. Like there's a fair amount of repeating sections, but I think, and this is maybe something I've noticed like when listening to a lot of Steely Dan, is just like, you know, they know what the strongest ideas are, but you can't just sit there and do it over and over again. You got to switch it up a bit. And the trick is how and where do you switch it up? And they often have a thing where they'll just like, if they have like a writing groove, it'll just switch to like a do da do da da do da do da, and then go back into whatever it was. Like it's a very it's like if you listen to 2 Steely Dan albums back to back, you're like, okay, I think I've heard enough marimba and double hits of the cymbal. Point being, I think that if I gotta at least point that out before we get to the rest of the album, because it kind of applies to all the songs in it. Like even the ones that are more straightforward, like The Past, there is enough like switching it up. And I think, you know, especially when it gets to like the auto-tune stuff, I think that is a little bit of like, it's like if the album itself could have a little bit of a trademark, it could be that occasionally you just go into the auto zone, if you will, not the car parts business, but you go into the auto-tune arena for a bit. And I think there is something like, I don't know, there's something subconscious about that going from standard to auto-tune that like conveys a different emotion, but I can't really put it into words beyond that. I don't know. There's something sort of ethereal about it.
Yeah, it was like one of those things that like when I first was recording music and starting to like kind of experiment with auto-tune, I was like I really hated it. I was like, I don't, you know, want people to think that I'm doing this because I like can't sing or something, you know, like I honestly, like Animal Collective was a really big influence to make me okay with using the auto-tune. Like after Buoys and stuff, I was like, okay, like it's cool. Like I can use it. Like I don't have to feel like ashamed to use it. Like I like the way it sounds, and I think other people will too. And it's like, I don't have to use it the whole time, but I can use it in certain parts. And so sometimes I still kind of wrestle with what parts should and shouldn't have it, but I'm more okay with like using it.
Here's my question is, do you use it like a subtle amount throughout the entire thing? Like on your regular vocals, just to keep it in tune in case you're slightly off? Or is it just you just do a retakes until you get it right?
Yeah, it's pretty much like all or nothing for me. Like, yeah, if it doesn't sound like it has auto-tune on it, then it probably doesn't have auto-tune on it.
Because I know like some people use Melodyne, where they'll go in and like really fine-tune the frequency of each individual syllable to get it perfect.
No, I've never gotten that hardcore into it. Yeah, I like literally just use... Yeah, I use like the pitch correction VST on Logic, and that's pretty much it. And sometimes the songs will, you know, it just won't even work with the pitch correction because like the keys change, and I'm too lazy to make multiple tracks and stuff like that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, as far as Animal Collective, I do kind of wish that more of the auto-tune had persisted. I guess we can get into that next episode, but
me too.
Having heard the new album, there are some parts where live back in 2019 when they debuted it, they used auto-tune, and then here it's completely stripped away, and it's like, I get why you don't want it to be on this particular album in this sequence, because then it would like stick out too much. I mean, they don't want another "What Had I Done?" Anyway, I'm not opposed to using auto-tune, for the record. I just find it interesting that, you know, it was so overused back in the day, and now when people use it, there's like a little bit of a taboo to it. But it's like, you guys know T-Pain can actually sing, right? And he actually sounds way better than if he caked himself in auto-tune. So
it's true.
I don't know. I think it's like AI. It's a tool to be used, but it shouldn't replace the whole thing, unless that's what you're going for. In which case, go for it. But auto-tune can't plagiarize other people's work. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
Track 6, which is Roger That.
inside a head that's filled with buzz. So I wait for you, and I'll stay in place till my eyes get sight of you. I'm here to stay, even after you feel like the world has gone away. Even after you feel like the world has gone away. Even after you feel like the world has gone away. Even after you feel like the world has gone away. Even after you feel like the world has gone away. I wanna be right next to you. I want to feel.
Which starts out with a Star Wars sample, which I'm curious what specifically that's from. Is that from a video game?
Yeah,
Because it's a very clean.
It's actually from
sample.
it's from COD.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay, I totally hear it, but it has like that same sort of like speaker box filter to it
Yeah.
that makes it sound like a stormtrooper
Yeah.
in Star Wars. So, was
Yeah,
that what
it
you were
was-
going for, or was it just like the phrase in general?
So honestly, like that title was a placeholder title. Like often when I just open up like Logic and I start a song, like I'll just put some placeholder title there, and I for whatever reason put Roger that, and then as I was writing that song and it kind of came together, I was like, okay, that like maybe the title should be one of the refrains or something, and or a lyric, and then all the lyrics, like I don't know, like as titles, it just they all sounded really corny, and I was talking to my wife about it, and she was like, just use Roger that. It kind of sounds neat. And I was like, why not? It has nothing to do with the song.
Terrorist twin. Oh, wait, I guess that's Counter-Strike, but you get what I was.
Yeah, throw that in at the end.
I really like this one. I like especially how it goes from like sort of a standard sort of like songwriting feel, and then it just goes full on into like the house, like 4 to the floor drums. Like, it's because honestly, as soon as that part comes on, every time I just want to start headbanging because it just like randomly starts going super hard, and I'm like, well, this is great. This one does feel like straight up a love song. Of course, the first lyric is "Hey, my love."
Yeah,
and
this
there's
is a love
nothing in
song.
here that makes me think. It does feel just like you're sort of spilling your beans.
Yeah, there's no ambiguity. This is a love song about my wife. That's all it is. Yeah, and it's got some different sounds, I think, to the rest of the album, especially in the choruses.
The lyrics kind of remind me of like a Pet Sounds song, where it is just very much like just pouring your heart out, but also like it's not a ballad by any means, but it's also like, I don't know, it's just got that sort of quality to it. Like if you told me that this was a list of like Brian Wilson lyrics from a song I'd never heard, I'd be like, yeah, I'll believe that. I mean, maybe he wouldn't say he often fucks up, but
I was going to say probably not that
as
long,
time
but-
goes on, if he's not doing the Disney albums, he'll be
Yeah.
fine.
But that being said, I do think like there's something Disney-esque about that song too. Like I'm sure I ripped off the line, but like that opening and the bass line that continues throughout, the dun 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 dun, like that, I swear is like from some Disney movie or something.
Yeah, there is like a bit of like an alt 90s rock feeling to that bass line. Mm-hmm. But I like it. It's funky. It gets you into it.
Yeah.
I think you just there's something about like the way each of these songs start, which maybe when we get to the next song will be more of a debate.
Yes.
But I think you just have like a way of immediately getting someone into the feel of a song, and I don't think there's really any like sections of music on the album that like stick out like they shouldn't be there, even if the ones that I'm not particularly a fan of. I think as far as the vibe of the song that you're going for, they seem to work really well. All right, penultimate song, number 7, Crash Cars.
If you think I'm about to go without you, you don't know anything about me. I crash cars just to collect
I thought originally I called it Crashing Cars, but maybe that's the Killers fan in me thinking of Under the Gun and all that. But
Well, originally it was called Cars Crash.
whoa. We got an artist over here. By the way, for those listening, my album did get here about half an hour ago. I just didn't want to interrupt our conversation to point it out. My Animal Collective album is here. I am going to probably wait to listen to it till I get a better turntable. No, we're going to keep talking.
Okay.
I'm not going to. I wouldn't. Unless it was absolutely a necessity. It's inside, so everyone can relax.
Okay.
It's not out in the Texas heat.
Yeah,
getting
if it was
all
out
warped.
on the stoop, like, yeah.
I think. So you added a new. For context for those listening,
Yes.
I got an early copy of this album about 2 weeks ago, something like that,
Yeah.
and it had different production choices, which actually Jordan sent me the updated version this morning, and I got to compare it. And there is like a little bit of an intro that you added to the front of this one.
Mm-hmm.
What is there a specific reason for that, or is it like that same sort of like you listen to something of your own for so long, you start to get tired of it and you want to switch it up a bit to keep it fresh?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I definitely felt something irked me about it just coming in like very hard. And yeah, I knew I was kind of thinking like I was like toying around with the idea of having something come before that. Like I was thinking about having the crashing car sound effect, but that just sounded so corny and cheesy in the end. So I was like, okay, maybe there's like a cool way to have a little intro lead up to it. And so I just basically like took the bass line and then like slapped a couple bars of that at the front. And then I was like, okay, like, and the drum beat on top of that, so that it's all like VST. I did that on the MIDI keyboard. And then,
Well, I really like the guitar loop in the main part of the song.
yeah, no, that was like, I just kind of put that together real quickly. And I was like, I kind of like this. And I liked the fact that it was kind of like lower in volume. So it's kind of like, there's this really awesome hymn song actually that.
You mean Her? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we'll go full discussion on this on another episode. But yeah, there's a song. It's called, I think it's actually called I Love You, and then in brackets, a prelude to tragedy. And it's starts off with like, it's just like so low in volume. And it's like, it's this like weird like jump scare that they did on purpose where it's like you're forced to turn up the volume because you're like, oh, I got to hear the song. But then all of a sudden, it just fucking jumps in like full volume and just like blows your head off your shoulders.
Yeah, that definitely seems like a deliberate thing that they would do.
Yeah,
I mean, not knowing them as a band, I don't know. Just that seems like a Bam Margera decision.
yeah, it's a jackass stunt on an album. But yeah, so it was kind of similar, but not as hardcore with the idea that like in the place of having a car crashing sound effect, that the abruptness or the idea of a car crashing would just come in the way of like that start, hitting after a fairly lower volume section at the beginning. So that was kind of in a nutshell the idea behind it.
Well, I think this is, can't remember where it was in my, I think it was in my top 5 from this album, Crash Cars, because I really do like the like guitar loop in this one. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be too like complicated, but I also like the way that it's like incorporated in the hook part of the lyrics. Mm-hmm. So it's a great little upbeat song. I have no complaints aside from the intro, but of course I'm not the artist, I'm just the audience member. I think I couldn't be a music critic because I would be able to decide too much with a musician. I wouldn't be able to.
That's fair.
I'd be like, I didn't like this, but making things is hard, and especially when you put so much of your heart into it. But also, it's not something I would do. But of course, like it would just be me going in loops. Then you'd never get a pitchfork review out of me. That's for sure.
That's funny, but I mean, it's valuable. Your input is valuable as well. I only know what I know, so it's like it made sense for me to do it. I mean, everyone might hate that intro for all I know. I might be the only one that thought.
No, I think it's literally they won't even notice because they didn't hear the early version like I did.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
That's true.
So this is another one where you have like the sort of like fast lyrics and like not a verse, but like or a chorus, but like a pre-chorus kind of bit, or maybe that is the chorus. I think that's the thing with this songwriting is that it
it's hard to
like what the verse is, but then the rest of it is just like the rest of the song. and it all works together.
Yeah, this one I think it does like sort of like there's like three parts, I would say. Like there's like the main verse, and then there's like kind of like a variation of the verse, and then there's like the chorus. And I think that structure just kind of repeats itself 2 times, and then the chorus goes like 2 times at the end with more instruments coming in on that last one. But yeah, it's just like, to me, it was very just kind of like almost like a pop punk song, and kind of had like a little bit of a 80s vibe going on with it. Another one of the really early songs, like I think I wrote that in like either spring or summer of 2022. Kind of like changed the lyrics a little bit since then, but yeah, pretty otherwise kind of stayed the same. And that's another one of those songs where it's like some of the lyrical choices are kind of purely for melodic purposes, more so than lyrical purposes.
All right. Well, I gotta say that as far as a song on a Jordan Randall album, it's good. I'm starting to run out of compliments that I can give you.
That's totally fine. I feel very complimented. So
again, another one where I think it could be a single. I think this album's got a lot of them, you know, and if
they're all
that's
singles,
that's always a good thing.
Okay, the last song.
Let's get to the closer. Watching Me Die.
Yeah.
I've seen how quickly things can end, but then I've seen how things begin again. It's a balance after all. Nothing's big if nothing's small. It just depends. And then I see you standing there, bending circles out of squares, sewing stitches in the tears. When I get the motor running, I'm gonna be something stunning. I'm pretty sure I'm watching my life go by. I'm pretty sure you're watching me die. I'm pretty sure I'm watching my life go by. I'm pretty sure you're watching me die.
This one's a little bleak. You were talking about the upbeat instrumental and the darker lyrics earlier, but I think this one definitely has like the most relatable of the lyrics, but also like it goes to a darker place than the rest of the album.
Yeah,
But it just feels more sincere that way.
yeah, for sure. I think this one's like, very relatable, I think, to a lot of people, just kind of, feeling like you're not doing the right thing or whatever in your life, or like, having aspirations that are always like a little bit out of reach that you're trying to constantly catch up with or something, feeling like you've wasted time, that stuff. So yeah, I think it's, but ultimately it's, I think, an optimistic song, because I think ultimately it is a little bit of a love song, and it's kind of about this balance or whatever in life where, like, you can't appreciate the sweet without the sour, I guess. Everything's a balance.
Yeah, I think it's definitely relatable with, like, I can relate to the feeling of having a daily routine like that, and it maybe being not the way that you envision that your life would go, but at the same time, you are like contemplating the future while at the same time sort of embracing the present in a good way. So
yeah, for sure. And that's another song that you got an early version of that's slightly different on the final one. Little tweak of the...
I think I only noticed that because of the lyric sheet. Like, if you hadn't pointed it out, I wouldn't have noticed because it is so tiny. It's literally just one word.
Yeah.
But I think if I saw a headstone with the phrase "it was nice" on it, I'd be like, hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I like, that whole idea. That's why I changed the lyric, was that in the end, it's like, you just, no matter what you're doing with your life, if you feel like you're kind of, squandering opportunities, or you're taking full advantage of the opportunities, so long as you had a good ride, like, what does it matter?
Right. And I should point out, I really like the lyric "bending circles out of squares," because that's I like the visual of that. I don't know. It works. Like, as soon as you say it, I'm like, I can picture someone in my mind like actually doing that and like turning it into like a hula hoop or something. And then It's a really interesting way to end the album because it does, to me, sort of feel like a middle album track. But like you said, you hit shuffle, so if it works, it works, you know?
I think just because of the maybe like the perceived moroseness of it, I think it felt like a good closer. I think just like visually also with the title being Watching Me Die, I feel like that made sense to be the last one. It was like, oh, that sounds like that's going to be a really dark one at the end with that title. But then you like probably listen to it and be like, oh, it's actually quite upbeat.
You got that Afrobeat
Yeah.
loop going, a very familiar Afrobeat loop. Hint, hint. But it works. And when you slow it down a bit, it may be a little like jarring at first, but then like as the hook, the Watching Me Die part comes out, I think it just ties it all together in this very Jordan Randall synchronistic way, you know?
Nice. Well, man, I'm glad it comes across that way. It was one of the ones that I was definitely like on the fence about including on the album as well, because there's when you hear those B-sides, you'll probably think to yourself like maybe this one should have been on the album. I could have gone like in the brother sport direction and gone with a very upbeat ending, but I was like, let's go with this. Watching
I'm not opposed to making my own fan mix, my own track list. I mean, that's what I'm doing for both of the Animal Collective albums. So
there you go. Yeah, you can make the supercut of the like almost 30 songs that I recorded if you want.
Yeah. I mean, I think I did that with Kid A and Amnesiac and all the B-sides back in the day before they did on vinyl for the anniversary and all that. So
Right.
All right. Well, everyone go check out this album if you like what you heard. If you don't like what you heard, get
Don't
lost.
bother checking it out.
I guess. But still, support Jordan Randall because he's a great musician. And I think because I spent 2 years making this documentary and wanting to preserve media and keep stuff online for people to enjoy, you should put videotapes back up on streaming. That's all I have to say.
Maybe. I'll have to think about that. There's a number of albums that have had very short lifespans online and then come off.
Well, then I need the entire archive because shit.
You're gonna be looking at a lot of songs then because I've been making albums since I was like 15. So.
Well, I'd be interested to hear how your musical journey started and how it evolves. Like that's kind of like when I go all the way back to like the Ween tapes they were making when they were like 15. It's interesting to hear how there is like it doesn't really resemble a lot of their later music, but it also sort of does in a subconscious way.
Yeah, I think that like that's probably the case for most artists. Like I definitely would say that's the case for me because like there's always this kind of like root thing, whether it's like those kind of like the morbid fascination lyrics or like that kind of melodic sensibility, I think, has always been something that has been in my songwriting thing, like from the beginning. But I think that if anything now, I'm just trying to use the tools that I have in different ways to make things sound kind of different. But I will openly admit that in, however long it's been that I've been writing songs, there are a shit ton of songs that will, to most people, sound identical. There's a lot of songs where I'm like, oh, I'm just writing the same song again. But I'm like, you know what? No one's heard it, so who cares?
Hey, man, we reviewed that Misfits album, and we complimented the hell out of it for doing the exact same thing. So
yeah.
If the music's good, and I mean, what? Are we going to review a Beach House album and then just say that 12 times in a row? All right, well, everyone go listen to the album. It's on, I'm assuming it's going to be on everything like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube.
Everything. Everywhere
Deezer,
you go.
Tidal, Amazon Music. Wait, no. Are they shutting down Amazon Music?
I don't know.
Did that just come out like a day or two ago?
I'm not aware of that.
Oh, maybe it was Google.
I wouldn't be surprised
if
Google
Music is shutting down.
Google Music has always been basically non-existent, so that's totally fine if they shut that down.
Right. And if they shut down Spotify, I won't complain because I hate their fucking user interface. But
yep, I mean,
I'm not saying you should simp for a $1 billion corporation, but if you're going to on the music streaming side, Apple Music's where it's at. And I'm pretty sure that the reason that your two most listened to songs on Apple Music are Mother Earth and Where the Wildest Waters Rush is because of me. So,
well, thank you, Greg, my number one fan.
Yeah, I guess that's true at this point. Maybe. I don't know. Is there someone out there that you think is like more into your art that isn't you?
I don't know. I don't think I think about it enough. I
Fair
see
enough,
I see
dude.
the listener counts, and I don't know. I that's kind of where it starts and ends for me. I'm like, okay, somebody's listening to it. That's
Right.
cool.
Well, I think it's fair to say that your Animal Collective archiving is more well known than your songwriting.
Yeah,
But
which is
not to
weird.
discredit the songwriting, just
Yeah, because I try and like throw some music on the YouTube channel every now and again. I'm like, come on, guys, click on that. They're like, no, it's not Animal Collective. So maybe what I should do.
you got to do a full on AV Terror impression. And
Yeah,
see if
yeah.
people fall for it.
Or maybe like I'll put up like a bootleg and then just kind of slip some of my songs in the middle of it, And then when they're listening to
Yeah,
it,
people
they're
be like,
"Oh,
"Whoa, I've never heard this. Where did it come
this
from?"
Sounds so different.
And then someone tries to interview them about it months later, and they're
Yeah.
like, "I have no idea what the fuck you're talking
What are you
about."
talking about? We never made a song called Castle Ghost.
That's it for our album discussion. We're going to move on to the
Move on.
documentary that I made. But before we do that, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor.
This is Tobor. Tobor, the telesonic robot. Batteries not included. He's under your control. With a click from the telesonic commander, to circle. To proceed forward, to circle. Or to pick up the support module and return, all on your command. Tobor is robot spelled backwards. Tobor, the telesonic robot from Shopper.
All right, welcome back. We have a special guest with us today. We are joined by a man whose face I've become very familiar with over the last 2 years, and his voice, of course. Mr. Travis Boles, filmmaker, videographer, father, husband, Twin Peaks fan, jack of all audio trades, kind of. Not to downsell. Oh God, this is going horribly.
I'm comfortable with
This
that
is just
intro.
a train wreck
I'm
of an
comfortable
intro.
with that.
Welcome. Thank you, Travis, for joining us.
I think that was the best way that you could have introduced.
If no one cuts
This
me off, I'm just going
segment
to
here.
keep going, and it'll just get worse and worse. So
Well, let's not cut him off then. Let's see where this goes.
no, let's start the movie talk instead. I think
Okay, yeah, that's probably better.
everyone already knows these episodes are too long anyway.
Okay, so you made a movie,
did.
Greg.
I made a
You made
documentary.
a documentary. You spent 2 years making a documentary.
I guess I should give the backstory to what it is.
Yes. What is an elegant weapon? Where does that name, for those who maybe have not seen a particular series of films,
So
where does that name come
it
from?
comes from the movie Star Wars, as it was originally titled in the 1970s. People now know it as Episode 4, A New Hope. But it's the scene where Obi-Wan brings Luke back to his hut and he gives him a lightsaber. And after Luke turns it on the first time, he's waving it around a bit. Obi-Wan describes it as an elegant weapon from a more civilized age, meaning that it's somehow more civilized than a projectile weapon, which has way more tactical advantages, but he's also a monk with a sword, so you can't really argue with him. So the reason I chose that title is because the documentary is about Travis Boles and his friends, Corey Gray, Jonathan Pruitt, Aaron Irvin, who is now his wife, and a handful of others in the early 2000s got together to make a short film called 3 in the Afternoon, which is about like loose versions of themselves getting real lightsabers randomly out of the blue one day. They look like toys, but when you turn them on, they're actually real and they can kill and like slice through stuff. So then it's just like a matter of what do we do with these things now that we have them? And of course, the first thing that they do, because they're, 20-somethings, they go out to the tennis court and start sparring with them or fighting, depending on who you ask. And then it just became a thing where they got in touch with a guy named Ryan Weber, who did his own viral hit called Ryan vs. Dorkman, a lightsaber fight video, which sort of inspired a lot of people to try to do their own, especially because he had his own tutorial on After Effects of how to make lightsabers for free, and anyone could do it, especially back then when you could actually just pay a standard fee for a software, not a monthly subscription. But then that inspired Travis and his friends to do it on their own, and at first they had their own sort of rough, rudimentary effects, and then Ryan, once Travis posted it on this website called theforce.net, Ryan saw the short, liked it, and thought, this would actually be even better if I could fix their lightsabers and make them like movie quality like I'm known for. And so they got in touch and he just did it for free and it elevated it. And then once they put it on YouTube, within like a few months, it got millions of views and it was a viral hit in its own right, which back in the day, that was considered viral. Nowadays, not so much. That's like standard for YouTubers of certain statures, like on a Tuesday. But back then, it was a big deal. And so that sort of inspired them to, like, the reception to it and the amount of eyes on it inspired them to make a sequel and sort of expand the story and follow it. And the way that they expand the story is a guy from Hasbro shows up and says, hey, your 30-day playtesting period's up. Give me your lightsabers back. And they're kind of like, well, no, it's mine. I'm not giving it back. I didn't see your name on it. And they're like, well, there was paperwork in the case. They're like, well, I didn't sign it. So now we have to fight over it. Of course, this is me paraphrasing. No one actually says this in the movies, but the dialogue, to Travis's credit, is much better than my my drunk history-esque recounting of it. But I am sober, for the record. So yeah, that's and I. The reason that I made this documentary is because at the end of that second short, 6 in.the.morning, they tease a third one called 9 in.the.evening, and I think me and everyone that watched it, we were like, oh my God, they're going to do another one and the story's going to go even bigger and crazier. I can't wait. And that was 2007. And here we are in 2023. 9 in.the.evening has not seen the light of day, but I was curious and I wanted to make a documentary just to explore a new type of content or filmmaking. And this was just one of the first things that came to my brain. And I reached out to Travis on Twitter just out of the blue. And I was like, hey, I want to make a retrospective on these two things. Would you be interested to do an interview? And he said, yeah. And then we did a series of interviews. I think over 3 nights, it ended up totaling like 10 or 11 hours of total footage that I had to comb through. And then he put me in touch with other people like his friends and Ryan Weber and, you know, other ancillary people connected to it. And I just interviewed all of them. And slowly over time, Travis was digging up these tapes and archival materials that he could send to me and I could put into the movie. And it turned from what was going to be like a 20 to 30 minute, like, you know, nostalgia thing into this full-fledged, like, documentary telling the story of this group of friends and all the stuff they went through to get these movies made. And of course, Travis is the main driving force in that because he's just a natural storyteller, kind of like Kevin Smith, but I would say that his quality of storytelling has endured throughout the years, unlike a certain disappointing filmmaker. So, what? I'm throwing shade at Kevin Smith, not you.
Thank you.
I know maybe it's not a high bar
Kevin
to
Smith
start
is
from.
listening.
I might even agree with you.
But yeah, that's the backstory of the doc, and that's how we ended up here today. The movie just premiered 5 days ago on Saturday the 23rd, and it's kind of crazy to be able to wake up every day and think, oh, I don't have to work on the movie anymore, thank God. But I really am proud of it, and I had a really great time assembling it. Even though it was a slow process, I think, like many slow burns, the bang at the end was worth it. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you should be proud of it. It was a fantastic doc, thoroughly engaging. I think the subject matter I was not familiar with going in. I will admit, I did not know about either of Travis's movies or any of Travis's movies. I didn't know about theforce.net. I didn't know about Ryan Weber, none of that stuff. I've watched the Star Wars movies, but I was not aware of that sort of community. That was kind of like, you know, a little more underground, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I was telling Greg earlier, like it really makes me want to delve more into it because seeing that now, I'm like, oh wow, there's so much to explore. But the real big takeaway, I think, from the doc was that it really inspired me. So I've dabbled in a little bit of filmmaking myself, but it really, you know, kind of made me want to get back into it because it's like you kind of forget filmmaking. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. It's a roller coaster, right?
Yes.
Like it's detrimental to your health as much as it is good for your soul, right? Like maybe most art. And I think you guys kind of really covered that in the doc, like the kind of frustrating aspects of it, but then like that kind of cathartic side of it too. And I think, you know, it's like Travis and, you know, like you and your friends making this, I think it resonated with so many people because like they saw themselves in it, and it was like, this is us. These guys are representing us, right? And it's like you don't need like millions of dollars to go into production value to hit that chord. You guys just did it, which is amazing, and I think it's inspirational.
Man, that's a really lovely thing for you to say. I really appreciate that, Jordan. Especially having just met you here in this moment we're having right now on your podcast in this instant. So that's, I want to inspire people with this story and what happened. I've been told repeatedly in these incredibly generous comments that have come flooding back over this last week since the documentary's come out, this got people going, making movies. This got people going, in some cases, into their careers. The TFN scene, the fact that this is mentioned in the same breath as that collective, that was a crazy thing. And there were a few of them around that time. There was the DBX user boards. There was, pre-YouTube, there were some pocket filmmaking collectives on the internet. And TFN in particular is a particularly interesting one because a lot of those people went on to big careers, big projects, and the spirit of that filmmaking group and that world continues through the lightsaber choreography competition and through Ryan's work and a handful of really other incredibly talented and passionate people. I think I think the word filmmaker is thrown around because of its utility. I don't see myself that way. I got way inspired to make backyard movies and went really hard at it. And leading up to 3, before I moved to Austin, I made like some shorts, made 3 pretty ambitious like things. And then we went away, and then to come back and make 3 being inspired by Ryan, being inspired by what was going on the internet, seeing a video, and it was like, I'm going to put that in my movie. I'm going to put a lightsaber in my movie to get some sort of mechanical advantage to walk into a room that has an audience. We all like lightsabers, right? Here we go. Something relatable, right? Like, what if they showed up at your door, right? What if they just fell into your lap? I read My Daughter the Indian in the Cupboard a few weeks ago, and it really came flooding back to me how influential that book was. And also, like I say in the documentary Ghostbusters, where something fantastic is now real and you're just going to have to deal with that. To pluck that string and to play with those toys, that's what I wanted to do. And the fact that people connected emotionally with it, I think, is why we're talking right now, why the last 10 years of my life have been so crazy, and why I'm really grateful to Greg for deciding to invest his time into telling the story.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's your trademark at this point. So, as a guy who's edited down your long answers, Travis, I'm used to it. So, you got a good audience.
Okay, this gets me into trouble.
No.
You go now.
Yeah, no.
I do want to echo kind of what Jordan was saying earlier, which is that, maybe filmmaking isn't the word for it, but there is just sort of that creative urge that I think we all sort of have, at least the 3 of us and people like us, where like it may be a pain in the moment to get it done, but you wouldn't want to be anywhere else doing anything else than right there doing that, After I went to film school, anytime that I wasn't on set, I wanted to be on set. Even though I know when I'm there, I'm going to be nervous and, manic and running around and doing all this stuff and maybe want to go home the entire time. But the second I get home, I'm like, damn, I wish I was back on set right now, because that's just where I feel like I belong. So, I mean, the fact that you were able to sort of experience that with your friends. And of course, working with your friends isn't always the smoothest thing, as I think we can all attest to. I think you sort of lucked out in that when it comes to 3 and 6, and maybe not what was in between the 2, you did things did go pretty smoothly in terms of, balancing the history you have with these people with the practical hardships of production. And I think it's easy to get distracted when you're on set and end up missing things, but you seem to be smart enough and, you have enough experience to where you know all the coverage that you need to get to elevate something above just what's on the page. Like, you're not just shooting everything in a wide shot and calling it quits, like, you know, James Nguyen or something. So again, I shouldn't be comparing you to like the shittiest filmmakers on earth, because you really are talented.
Oh, come on. I'm a big Ed Wood fan. Thank you for saying so, Greg. I'm a big Ed Wood fan, and so it's my very favorite movie, and I don't know what to do with. I mean, you can bring out a half, and I've done it, right, when I've gotten to do commercial work, right? You can bring out the half-ton truck, you can bring out the DP, you can bring out the 4-man G&E, you can have, you know, the weight I've punched professionally in the world of commercials and television. I got to play with those toys, but I only really, for me, knew how to use them so effectively, because you're absolutely right, Greg. I lucked out with my friends. I've been giving it so much thought over the last 2 weeks, because a lot of my pain is in the movie that you made, and I don't mince words. I don't hold back. I was ready to talk when you approached me. Your documentary's been out for about a week, and you know, it's my phone hasn't been exploding, you know, with my old group who, you know, may feel that it's shots fired. They may feel that I don't know if they're embarrassed or thrilled. We had a great, you know, a couple of them have reached out. It's risky. Any cooperative activity, in my opinion, on that level is risky. You're asking, when you make a film and when you look I think about Howard Hawks a lot in this regard, right? Where when you watch Rio Bravo, you're basically watching one dude's, like, this is how he thinks women should be. This is how he thinks men should be. This is how he thinks the world should work. This is how he thinks what our responsibilities to one another are. And they're baked into the movie. And I don't have like a Hawksian image for what I think another human being should say or do or think or carry themselves. I brought my friends around. I was like, okay, well, you're Corey, because you are Corey. And maybe this Corey is a waiter at Chili's, because you're a waiter at Chili's. And, you know, it's like that Eddie Izzard bit, a creeping kid for my film, The Creeping Kid. You know, it's typecasting, because typecasting is so easy, right? And then we get to heighten reality, right? We get to heighten who we are and what happens to us. And I wanted to play in that world and do that. And in some ways, in the short term, it served those relationships. In some ways, in the long term, it didn't. And, you know, that's a tough thing, to do a cooperative, creative activity because you ask someone for their time and their generosity and their patience to dance in your show and to be marionetted and to be told what to say and where to stand and what to wear. And are we always so careful with one another when we do that? I don't think so. I think that filmmaking in particular is a perilous cooperative activity if we're not careful with one another.
Oh, I can attest to how difficult it can be to just get not only your friends to actually take the time to make a thing, like all be in the same place and make a thing in a concerted effort, but also like that aspect of writing characters for them that are versions of themselves. I think most people, if they're not like in the actor's realm, you know, headspace, I think it can be hard for them to even try to comprehend that without being in their own head too much, or too outside of their own head to think about how they're being perceived. So it's a tricky line to walk. But I also want to point out that I think I am lucky that you were willing to be so open, because I think that when it comes to documentaries, a lot of the time, especially because there's so much like true crime documentaries out there, I think that there's a tendency for, you know, the subjects of these things to almost their story to sort of be exploited and not given the care or you know, the level of detail that it needs to really do the story justice. And of course, we didn't really get into every single thing that we could have. There are definitely parts of the documentary that were sanitized just for A, streamlining the pacing, and B, you know,
right,
there's just some stuff you don't need to cover. I mean, at the end of the day, we're making a documentary about lightsabers. We don't need to go into every dark detail of the world. So I think I think I was lucky
Right.
that we were able to sort of maintain this sort of wholesome vibe. Like the fact that the darkest our movie that the doc gets is, the Tyler Dome section when all the friends are having friction, and then at the end when you're sort of, monologuing about your experience with not making 9 and how that's sort of affected you going forward up until now. I think that the fact that the movie doesn't go any darker than that is a bonus, because I think most times when you say I made a documentary, people assume it's going to be like Food Inc. or something they just don't want to see. Like, here's the world and here's how fucked up it is, unfiltered, raw, uncut, bum fights.
Yeah.
But then
sure.
when it comes to this, we are sort of able to maintain this like media, like it is just about like nostalgia and friendship and all the stuff that we had Joe Terrell say at the start. Which, by the way, I just want to point out repeatedly. I will continue to point out how amazing it is that Joe Terrell, the guy who did he worked with Travis's dad at KLTV, and then Travis asks very politely for him to do the exposition newsman part at the beginning of 6 a.m, and he said yes, and he did it for free, and he nailed it. The fact that we were able to reach out to him all these years later and say, hey, we're making a documentary about this. Would you be willing to lend your voice to this again for free? And he said yes. The fact that all of that happened and it ended up in the movie, and it just sounds so great, and it just ties, like, it's perfect. I'm running out of words to describe it. I love the fact that it happened so much.
It's a big get, and KLTV was bought by Gray Television, and so and while my dad was news director, it was bought twice over by corporate interests, and so as so many smaller market television stations have, and so the fact that Joe loves these movies, and Joe's a fan, and Joe is also a ham bone, right? There's a reason he's on television. He's a salty Christmas ham, and so it's basically like having Clark Kent do the VO in your movie. It's as close to James Earl Jones as we're gonna get, as far as a really big, fence swinging narrator voice to have in your movie. I was so glad that he did that, and he wants to be in anything we make in the future. So, hey Joe, thank you for everything. And there were so many happy accidents on your movie, and it's a beautiful thing.
Like finding that box of tapes in storage, that was like some of the stuff we were missing in the movie that you just found, and then it all perfectly like fleshed out the whole thing. I'll keep saying the word perfect because it did seem like, a lightning in a bottle sort of happy accidents thing for a lot of it.
There was a lot of stuff. There was a tape deck that I got access to when I got hired at a job in Madison, Wisconsin, that if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have been able to capture any of the Sony stuff off my first DV camera. And these are the little things that I've now brought your podcast to a screaming halt as soon as I said Sony mini DV tape. But, these are things where I'm not going to spend $3,000 on eBay to get a 20-year-old DV deck. And it's amazing. There was a lot of kismet and a lot of really special things. And I felt comfortable with you, Greg, getting obviously very real about my heartbreak, and, my stuff is right under the surface, right? And in my personal life, in most cases, my experience has been that people run away from that, right? They don't really want to be, for the most part, don't come towards it, right? And I think that's not just true for me, right? And it's tough for people in person, as I understand it, to talk about their mental health, to talk about their successes and their failures and what they want. We don't always have a safe space for that. And it's risky to talk about professionally, right? It's not the kind of thing you throw around at work, right? I don't talk about 3 and 6 just casually at work. It's something that I have to kind of ease into and discuss carefully, right? And so it's scary, like I said in the video I made before your thing came out, to be vulnerable and available on the internet. And I woke up, particularly this last Monday morning, going, oh shit, having the same feeling that I had so many times before in my life. Have I made a terrible mistake? Did I make a documentary for 2 years with an awesome person who threw himself into it? Did I betray myself or somebody? Did I do something wrong? And the answer is no. I'm so thrilled that you have done what you did. I think it's it's told my daughter, we got halfway through it. My daughter watched the movie. She's 8 years old. She turns to me and she goes, "Daddy, you never made 9 in the evening? I'll help you make it." And I, my heart just shatters into a million pieces. And I'm like, my beautiful darling, when I make a movie, you will be in it. And so the thing I think I want to say in this moment that I'd like to share with the two of you is like in that week since Greg put out this tremendous creative effort that I did lay myself pretty flat to my own peril and the peril of others. The moment I'm in is that I think I may have to create things just to continue to exist, right? I have now made a big show about how my friends didn't, or whatever, that didn't work out, right? So the question floating in the air is, okay, well then what are you going to make? You so proud of your 3 and 6 thing. You say they're art. You get all choked up when one dude called them art. You going to make some more art? You going to make some more stuff, buddy? So I'm over here writing. I got a video coming out on Friday that I'm excited about. I was up till 1 a.m. making a thumbnail last night. I haven't done that in 4 years since I produced WebDM for 5 years, and my thumbnails were a hit. My thumbnails were freaking awesome for 4+ years. I was very, very proud of my awesome thumbnails, and to get that blood pumping again, starting to feel my claws, man. My claws are getting sharp, man. And it's good. And so that to be that vulnerable and then to kind of be like, all right, well, do you want that to be the last thing that you ever did on the internet was have a 2-hour documentary come out about how, heartbroken and disappointed you are, but that you fight your damned hardest. And then we celebrated it on this live stream. I had Greg on my channel. We had this like, yay, right? Look at us. And then I go to bed and I wake up the next morning. It's like, right, but now life after an elegant weapon means that you have to make things. It means that you have to go out and pick up that camera and create something and tell a story. You can't turtle up because there's no more excuses. I'm 42. How much more time you got to make the thing and tell the story you want to tell? Patton Oswalt wrote a brilliant book called Werewolves and Spaceships and Zombies. It's brilliant. And in the front of it, he's like, everybody has a movie in them. Everybody has like at least one movie inside of them, right? And then there's that great quote from Ron Howard, like they say anybody can make a movie, and they're probably right? They ran that as a promo on the Masterclass promos there for that whole summer during the pandemic. And Ron Howard's right. I think probably everybody can direct a movie. I think I'm living proof. And I want to go on doing it. And even if it's the weight I want to punch, even if I never break out of a certain professional space or weight, I don't fucking care anymore, man. I like to make stuff, and I get to stand on this thing you made and go forth in my truth. And I would never have gotten to do that without you, Greg.
Well, I think we've teased another installment enough that we would have a small angry mob gathering to January 6th.
No, here's where we're going to start. We're not teasing.
Okay.
So let's talk about that on your podcast, because now everything I
Right.
say I'm gonna do sounds like I'm gonna do 9 in the evening. All right. So here's what I want to be clear. So here's a big announcement. Friday, tomorrow. When I got hired here in Madison, Wisconsin, I was here for about 6 months, and someone in the office started hiding ducks in my office. They started hiding rubber ducks in my office. First there was 1 duck, next day there was 2 ducks, next day there was 3 ducks. And for about a week, I couldn't figure out who was putting ducks in my office. And so, by God, I made a movie about it. I fired up my camera, I got into my costume, and I shot an episode of Unsolved Mysteries about how somebody's hiding ducks in my office. And I put it in the producer chat here at this production company that I'm working at, and instead of walking around going, which one of you is hiding ducks in my office, I made a movie about this conspiracy to hide ducks in my office. And it was the first creative thing in that regard I've made in years and years. And then I hid a camera in my office and caught the person hiding ducks in my office. And so 2 weeks later, I put out a second chapter that, of course, blows the roof off the whole thing. So both chapters of it will be on my YouTube channel on Friday. And then after that, have begun the process of doing a video on how I was the voice of Schroeder in It's Spring Training, Charlie Brown, which it was the last Bill Melendez, Lee Mendelsohn, Charlie Brown special, and my only IMDb credit other than Ryan vs. Dorkman 2. And I've captured it, and I'm going to make a YouTube video on how I was the last Schroeder, and kind of talk about that experience because I've got some weird stories to tell. And so telling stories on my YouTube channel as we beat the drum for another movie making effort is now my life as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, I just mean that no matter what you do, like even the content of the documentary was sort of superfluous after a certain point because everyone was just going to keep asking the same question. That the question that I registered a website domain after, where is 9 in the evening? You know, that's, you talk about how it's always going to follow you around, and it will. But at the same time, I think people, the general gist I got was that they were just excited to see you again, and you know, they'll look forward to whatever you put out, even if there's no one's holding a lightsaber in it. So I don't know. I think we can all get in our own head a lot about expectations, especially once you've got that 15 minutes of fame. Like, it would be nice if I could swap the amount of views on my most viewed video in this documentary, but realistically, it's not like I had this baked-in audience that I could expect for that to happen because of. So I think people that are interested in it will find it, and hopefully, you know, a bit of luck happens and we get more eyes on it in general. But of course, I don't want to overwhelm any of the subjects in the thing again, you know, because there is an aspect of that in the documentary where we just made this thing as friends, and then you put it up online and now everyone can see it. It's like, how comfortable can you really be with that if it's got thousands and thousands of views?
I wanted to say, though, in terms of like inspiration, like I think it's really fascinating what you're talking about, Travis, with like getting back into the swing of like, you know, your own sort of creative endeavors with your, you know, sort of micro budget or microscopic filmmaking with like the rubber duck thing and all that. It kind of sounds like the documentary inspired you as well. And it's a documentary about you, but it inspired you to get back into, you know, kind of chasing that creative, I don't know, flame that you were chasing, you know, when you made 3 and 6. And I think, like, you know, like we have to anticipate that this doc is going to like throw fuel on the fire for people wanting to see 9, right? But yeah, like in terms of 9 and like, you know, what you can maybe expect of, you know, I guess like fans of your previous work, what their demands might be. I mean, like now that we are in 2023, you know, there's like Kickstarter and GoFundMe and stuff like that. I mean, what do you think? Like, is there a possibility that if this documentary kind of like brings up that question to people, like, yeah, what about another installment in this, complete the trilogy? You know, I hadn't seen your films. I want to see 9 now. Like, this is all happened to me within the past like 3 days.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It absolutely has inspired me, and it's changed my thinking about what the possibilities are. The response over the last couple of weeks has been really astonishing, and where I'm at in my life professionally, where I'm at in my life creatively, I think I've got a shot at continuing the story and telling the story. And I've been thinking about it and making notes and rolling this sucker around in my head for years. And especially over the last couple of weeks, there have been some lively breakfasts and obviously some big high-flying conversations over here in my brain trust world over here, you know, particularly with my wife, Erin, who is in 3 and 6 and herself has published 7 YA werewolf novels, the Lone March series, which you can Google, but you know, I've got a writer, novelist wife who I'm constantly pitching this to and constantly throwing ideas at. And oh heavens, did we have a breakfast this week that has just been like so much fun. And so to your point, is crowdfunding like an option? I hadn't thought about it seriously or at all in this pretty much this entire gap. Now, I think now it's a completely different story. I think now with the scale that you're looking at, with the approach that at this point I can elevator pitch, with the talent pool that I have, I'm so lucky in my professional life between Austin, Texas and East Texas and now Madison, Wisconsin and the upper Midwest, living this life of production. If we were to mobilize going into 2024 to continue this story, I'm 5 or 6 phone calls away from having a very serious conversation about it, and the very thought of it is electrifying. It's just absolutely electrifying. And I'm kind of gathering it together, kind of gathering my thoughts together, gathering my approach together. I want to see it too. To hear you say that you had so much fun watching it and that now you want to see the rest of the story. I mean, that's a big deal. It's really all I need to know, right? Like, it's crazy. And I'm so inspired at this point, right? And I can't stop thinking about the Twin Peaks Returned, right? That, you have this huge time jump and they are looking back on a missing third chapter. I think that's why they called it The Return. It's a misnomer to call it maybe season 3, because you're skipping 25 years ahead and all these pieces have moved on the board and all these people are present, which imply one thing has happened and imply that something else happens. And this sort of tipping effect happens to everything you're looking at. You're not having exposition necessarily directly pointed at you in really any regard in that case. And that's where I start immediately thinking about RoboCop, and I start immediately thinking about movies where the media and the voice of the media, is really driving the story and giving scope and scale. 3 and 6. 6 has this threatening speech at the end of it where I give a dire warning for the, potentially apocalyptic consequences of these fantasy weapons with their fantastic possibilities entering our lives so suddenly. That's that I can hear the Jurassic Park bells ringing, right there, right? It should not exist. And if you can even take what you're scratching at, that it's a licensed fantasy weapon, and if you can even start to break that apart and even start to take what this is, that this energy and this thing that's happening that could be used as a weapon, is that ball is now in play, and how are we going to deal with it? Man, I could live there for a while. We have a bunch of stories to tell there, and I think it's within the range of possibility now, and I get chills just thinking about it, just talking to you two about it right now. It's crazy.
I think it's a fantastic idea, either which way you go about that. But like, I really love the idea of jumping ahead in time and seeing this kind of like post-apocalyptic view, because I think like that, that there's a really nice little kind of real world parallel that you can make there with like, gun control, right? It's like lightsabers are now just, they were available for consumers and anybody to use. But then the world went to shit because everyone was using lightsabers. It became too dangerous, and then they had to become outlawed, and then there was contraband, and then, I feel like there's a whole, like, there's something really cool about that little area to explore too. And then maybe like fill in the blanks later with going back to chapter 3 after exploring, this aftermath. I think that's a really cool idea.
Well, I think what's appealing about that time jump too is that that's sort of like an expansion of 6. How it's only a month has passed between, 3 and 6 in the timeline, but already they're having to sort of recap what happened that we didn't see with Joe Terrell on the news, and then later in dialogue, like what Corey's been up to. We don't get to see what he's been up to. We only just get to hear bits and pieces of maybe what was going on. So, yeah, no, I mean, Travis explained it better than I could, but I think, there is just a lot that's appealing about it, especially given the stature that it has among this little niche audience that you've carved out. I mean, of course, 3 million people saw 3 in the afternoon, but I mean, at this point in time, only 1,000 people have seen the documentary, but That's still 1,000 people, you know? That's not an insignificant a number of people. So the point being that obviously the goal is not to get from rags to riches and be, you know, an influencer and all this stuff. It's to express yourself, and if people want to come along for the ride, then that's great. And it would just help things in the long run, but you don't need to go to the Mr. Beast level just to make a thing.
Yeah, because I think that's like kind of what you like what your movies have been, Travis. It's like you've gathered a group of people that are like-minded enough that they want to see, you know, this idea come to life. But now that it's been shared on the internet and millions of people have seen it, it's like now your group of peers that are around you, they're like, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's make this movie. It'll be fun. It's just magnified. So it's like there's only like 1,000 people have watched the documentary so far, but it's only been online for like 5 days.
Right.
The people that do like I just watched it like yesterday. I'll donate $100 to this movie. I don't know anything about you, you know, outside of this documentary, but it was inspirational enough. I think you definitely will have support to making this stuff. And I think that if maybe it's like looked at as just an extension of your small group of friends that are all kind of rooting for you, there's like a larger group of friends that are rooting for you, even though you don't know these people personally. So,
well, who's more comfortable with spending their expendable income than Star Wars fans at the end of the day?
Totally.
I mean,
totally.
They love spending their money and not getting a return on investment. So, I mean, unless the return on investment is having a wall full of Funko Pops, then maybe. But you know what I mean.
I've really enjoyed talking to both. I know you're about to end your show. I've got to use the bathroom. This was great, and I'd love to, you know, visit with y'all again. This was so much fun.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
for
no,
your
it was a
time,
blast.
Travis.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I gotta go. I have to go to the bathroom.
You
guys.
go.
I love you both, but I gotta go.
We love you too, Travis. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for episode 4.
It's kind of funny. That's the kind of the same way that episode 3 ended.
That's
but you had to
true.
go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
Greg. It should be like a running thing. Like we always just end the cast.
A
like someone
running
has to go to
gag,
the bath.
you might say.
Oh,
Because I had the runs.
like it.
All right. Well, Jordan, I am looking forward to seeing other people's reactions to your album, and I hope that, you know, I get to continue making documentaries, and I hope that I'm fortunate enough in the future to get to tell stories as unique and as inspiring as Travis and his friend's story, because ultimately that's what is keeping me going, is just getting to fully illustrate a story through the audio-visual medium. So,
well, I think you're proving yourself as a very, you know, proficient and like a very talented young filmmaker, and I think like this is just gonna work wonders for you and, you know, your portfolio. I thought it was really good.
it is my portfolio at this point.
Well, it's a great portfolio then, because yeah, I think I saw some of the comments on there, like Greg's out here making Netflix like level docs for free on YouTube.
Oh, that's my best
like,
friend
yeah.
Cameron. So of course he's gonna light me up like that. Of course I appreciate it.
But he's not wrong. Like,
yeah.
He's not wrong. It's very, very good quality stuff, and yeah, it's it feels very pro.
As a bit of a footnote to this episode, for those of you that enjoyed Travis's presence and the way that he explains things, everyone keep an eye out on Netflix sometime within the next year for a documentary about a man named Barry Cooper, because you might just get another Travis appearance. I can't tell you when it's coming out or what it's going to be called, but he's done an interview. It's going to happen. It's going to be out there in some form. So that is not the last document. My documentary is not the last documentary that you will see Travis in the future.
No, I Googled it the other day. It's in the trades that never get busted. Comes out spring 2024. It's 4 episodes, and I'm heavy in the first one, is what I'm told.
That's great.
Nice.
Never get busted.
Oh, so they're
Netflix,
naming the series after
2020.
the DVD you put out. This is a whole rabbit hole. We might talk about it in the future.
Brother man, We have just begun to scratch how surreal this is all about to get. The fact that there is a thing called I made a documentary 15 years ago, right around the time we were making 6, called Never Get Busted, and a Netflix documentary of the same name is coming around, and that's weird, man. It's weird.
It's weird that there were 2
awesome.
documentaries in production at the same time that feature you and things you created in the past. There's like a very strange, like, cosmic parallel with that.
It really was bizarre, man. It was because it happened during our thing that I heard about this documentary was being made, and I was encouraged to reach out, and I made like a video for the producers. I was like, I shot this thing you're making a documentary on. I've took an assumed name, but I've got tapes, I've got everything. You should call me. And they did. And they flew up from Australia and flew a DP in from New York and came to my house the day before I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and they set up a softbox so big it barely fit in the room. And they put 2 cameras on me, and buddy, you know, they talked to me all day about the documentary I made in 2007 or 8, and so I can't wait for everybody to see that. I thought I was nervous about An Elegant Weapon. Now I'm nervous all over again about that.
Well,
It's gonna be
you
great.
definitely have a lot less to put out there. And by the way, speaking of that video, I think as you get closer to that, or maybe after it comes out, you should put that up for people to see, because I think it's a very entertaining video, and it is your sort of version of it's the Never Get Busted version of your, video that you put out before my doc, like your Where Is 9 in the Evening video. That's what it was called. So
That's true. I really want to put it out. I did make a really fun video. I will show it to
and
people.
I'll even send
Thank you,
Jordan the
Greg.
link just so he doesn't have to wallow in curiosity.
Yes, please do.
All right, so I'll send Jordan that. Jordan, you send me videotapes. God damn it, the album,
Yes.
not literally. Don't send me VHSs. I mean, you can if you want, but I don't know what it would be.
I'm gonna send you a bunch of mini DV tapes.
Okay, sweet. Or you could just scan them and
good.
send them over Dropbox or whatever ends up working out.
Help you with
All right.
that.
Thank you, Travis. Jordan, I always appreciate you. Everyone who's listening, all 5 of you, thank you. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next month to talk about the Animal Collective album and whatever movie we end up picking. We haven't decided yet, but we will by the time that comes around. So
You'll see when the episode comes out.
thank you, and have a good one.
Thanks, guys.